The moment when Thanos, after matching wits with Tony Stark on the ruined battlefield of Titan, looks him dead in the eyes and says, "You're not the only one cursed with knowledge." To most viewers, it seemed like a poetic line, a moment of mutual respect between two titans of intellect. But what if that line wasn't admiration at all? What if it was recognition? Recognition of a secret identity, of a dual existence that connects Tony Stark not just to Iron Man, not just to the Avengers, but to one of the most infamous characters in all of Marvel lore, Dr. Doom. Yes, what if Tony Stark always was, or was always destined to become, Dr. Doom? And what if Thanos, wielding the knowledge of the cosmos, saw through the mask, understood the curse, and confronted Tony not as Iron Man, not as Earth's savior, but as Doom in disguise? Today, I want to take you deep into a theory that ties together threads from the comics, the MCU's subtle clues, and the mythology of Thanos himself. A theory that reframes Tony Stark's journey and maybe even redefines the very fabric of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is not just speculation, it's a story hiding in the shadows of the MCU, waiting to be pieced together. To begin unraveling this, we need to think about what Thanos meant by that line. Cursed with knowledge. It's not just about intelligence. It's not just about being smart. Knowledge in Marvel storytelling often comes at a price. The more you know, the more burdened you become. Knowledge isolates. Knowledge corrupts. Knowledge transforms. And in Marvel Comics, there is no character who embodies the double-edged curse of knowledge more perfectly than Victor Von Doom, Dr. Doom himself. He is brilliant beyond compare, capable of outwitting gods, wielding science and sorcery in equal measure. But he is also tormented, cursed by his own pride, his own visions of the future, his inability to escape the destiny he believes himself tied to. Sound familiar? Because that is Tony Stark's arc almost word for word. Let's rewind to Tony's origins in the MCU. He begins as the arrogant genius, the billionaire playboy with an almost self-destructive addiction to knowledge, innovation, and control. The moment he sees behind the curtain of his own weapons empire, he cannot unsee it. The knowledge of what he's built, how it has been used to destroy rather than protect, becomes his curse. He is burdened with the awareness that the world is broken, and only he, through his intellect, can fix it. That is the mindset of Doom, not just of Iron Man. Doom does not wait for gods to save mankind. Doom declares that only through his brilliance can the world be reshaped. Tony makes the same choice again and again, whether it's building Ultron to protect Earth, or devising nanotech armor that fuses body and machine, or his relentless obsession with predicting threats before they arrive. Now imagine Thanos. He has wandered the universe, conquering worlds, absorbing philosophies, becoming not just a warlord, but a prophet of inevitability. He has seen countless versions of brilliance, countless tyrants and saviors. When he meets Tony Stark, the man who in his mind embodies this restless, cursed knowledge, Thanos does not see an Avenger. He sees Doom. Not the mask-wearing sorcerer king of Latveria yet, but the man who contains all of those seeds within him. Thanos recognizes the same curse he carries, the unbearable weight of knowing too much, seeing too far, and carrying the loneliness that knowledge brings. The fascinating part is how perfectly the MCU has been laying down breadcrumbs for this interpretation. Consider how often Tony Stark is framed not as a traditional hero, but as a man who stands apart from his peers, a man who thinks in terms of inevitability, sacrifice, and control. In Age of Ultron, when he builds Ultron, the Avengers accuse him of playing God. That phrase, playing God, is central to Doom's identity. Doom does not bow to gods. Doom replaces them. Tony in Ultron even argues that his vision of a suit of armor around the world is the only rational path forward. Is that not the same language Doom would use to justify ruling Latveria with an iron fist, declaring that only his vision can shield his people from chaos? What's more, the MCU repeatedly underscores Tony's fascination with legacy and mortality. He knows he is finite, fragile, human, but his mind is infinite, his innovations limitless. He flirts with transhumanism, embedding tech into his very body, as we saw with the nanotech suit. Doom, in the comics, follows this same trajectory. Scarred, remade, armored, fused with the very tools of his intellect until there is no distinction between man and machine. In a symbolic sense, Tony Stark's Iron Man suit is the prototype of Doom's armor. One is born from necessity, the other from tragedy, but both are armor as identity. So why would Thanos know this? Because Thanos has seen what Tony will become. Remember, Thanos is a character who peers beyond the linear flow of time. He understands destiny in a way no human can. His entire ideology is based on inevitability. He speaks of balance, as if it is not his will, but the will of the universe itself. When he says Tony is cursed with knowledge, it could easily mean he sees Tony's inevitable path toward doomhood. He sees the seeds of tyranny wrapped in Tony's genius, the curse of insight that will one day blossom into something darker. That is why he singles Tony out. Of all the Avengers, of all the enemies he faces, only Tony is given that recognition. Not Cap, not Thor, not Strange, Tony. And let's dig deeper into the symbolic resonance here. In comics history, Doom and Thanos are often contrasted. Doom is the human mind taken to its terrifying limit. Science, sorcery, and arrogance bound together. Thanos is the cosmic tyrant, obsessed with death, with balance, with the fate of universes. Yet, in their own way, they are mirrors. Both are cursed with knowledge. Both stand apart from mortals and gods. Both see themselves as the only ones who truly understand what must be done. When these two forces recognize each other, it is not admiration. It is the grim acknowledgement of a shared curse. That moment on Titan isn't just about respect. It is about identity. Thanos is saying, "I see you. I know what you are." Think back also to Tony's nightmares in Age of Ultron, the visions Scarlet Witch gives him of Earth's destruction. He sees the inevitable end, the death of his friends, and he feels powerless. That vision drives him into desperate creation, the very path that leads him toward Ultron. Doom, too, is haunted by visions of his mother's soul trapped in hell, visions of futures where only his iron rule saves humanity. Both men are haunted by futures they cannot escape, and so they justify their control. That is the curse of knowledge. To see too far, to feel too deeply the weight of inevitability, and to believe that no one else can handle the truth. Now, some may say, but Tony Stark is a hero. Doom is a villain. And on the surface, yes, that's the binary. But the MCU repeatedly complicates that binary with Tony. Was building Ultron heroic? Was creating the Sokovia Accords noble? Was keeping secrets from his team righteous? These are shades of gray. They are Doom's shades of gray. Doom is not a mustache-twirling villain. He is a man who truly believes his intellect and his burden of knowledge justify his rule. Tony operates in the same space. He is the hero because we see his intentions. But intentions can sour. Intentions can pave the road to doom. And here's the eerie part. What if Tony's death in Endgame was not the end? What if, narratively, it was the cocoon? Comics are full of resurrection, transformation, rebirth. What if the MCU planted seeds that Tony's sacrifice was not his exit, but his evolution? What if Thanos' recognition of Doom was not about the present Tony, but about the Tony yet to come? The multiverse is open now. Variants exist. Futures diverge. In one universe, Tony Stark's journey does not end with the snap. It continues into something darker, something inevitable. He becomes Doom. And suddenly, Thanos' words echo with prophetic weight. You're not the only one cursed with knowledge. It is as if he is saying, I see your curse, Stark. I know where it leads. I know what you will become. And when you do, you will understand me in a way none of your allies ever could. That is why the line hits with such eerie resonance when reframed through this theory. But let's pull back for a second, because this is not just wild speculation. There are direct parallels in Marvel Comics that make this theory not just plausible but almost poetic. In the comics, Tony and Doom have actually shared storylines where they are juxtaposed, even allied. One of the most striking is the infamous Iron Man run, where Dr. Doom literally takes up the mantle of Iron Man after Tony falls. Doom, stepping into Tony's armor, trying to redeem himself, trying to honor the fallen hero. That storyline in itself is Marvel whispering the possibility that these characters are intertwined at a mythic level, their identities bleeding into one another. So if the comics can play with Doom as Iron Man, why couldn't the MCU be playing with Tony as Doom? The curse of knowledge is the through line. Tony knows too much, feels too much responsibility, and cannot let go. Doom is the same. And Thanos, cursed with the knowledge of the universe, sees that mirror instantly. That is why he spares no such recognition for anyone else. Strange knows much, but Strange's knowledge is chosen, honed, trained. Tony's knowledge is raw, relentless. A curse he never asked for, but can never put down. That is Doom's energy exactly. And here's where the storytelling brilliance lies. The MCU thrives on recontextualization. A line that seemed like poetry at the time can, years later, be revealed as foreshadowing. This line can be retroactively transformed into prophecy. Fans will look back and realize, Thanos knew. He knew Tony's truth, Tony's destiny, Tony's doom. This is where our story begins, with Thanos, with Tony, and with a curse that binds them. If Arc 1 showed us how Thanos recognized the curse within Tony, then now we need to expand our view. Because this isn't just about a single line on Titan, or even about a single battle. This is about the architecture of the MCU, the mythos of Marvel Comics, and the way destiny weaves itself through characters like Stark and Doom. If Thanos recognized Tony not as Iron Man, but as the seed of Doom, then the entire saga of Tony's story looks different. Suddenly, every choice he made, every invention, every scar, every regret becomes not just the path of a hero, but the unfolding of a darker prophecy. Let's look at the foundation of this curse. Doom's curse has always been tied to knowledge forbidden, to secrets that cannot be unseen. In the comics, Victor Von Doom's tragedy begins when he seeks forbidden knowledge to rescue his mother's soul. His brilliance leads him into the realm of sorcery, into bargains with Mephisto, into experiments beyond the reach of ordinary science. One mistake scars him forever, both physically and emotionally. And from that scar grows the mask, the armor, the Doom we know. Now, compare this with Tony's own fateful mistakes. His origin is not a noble quest, but a revelation. Realizing that his weapons were fueling global destruction, his brilliance becomes a curse because it shows him the consequences of his work. From that scar, the shrapnel lodged near his heart, grows his armor, his mask, his transformation. Different surface details, but the same mythic pattern. Both men scarred by their own genius, both transformed by the curse of what they know. And the MCU plays with this duality constantly. Every time Tony tries to create a solution, the curse deepens. He builds Ultron to protect the Earth, but Ultron nearly destroys it. He creates new tech for the Avengers, but it divides the team. He signs the Sokovia Accords believing he's preventing chaos, but he actually fractures his own family. Knowledge pushes him forward, but the more he knows, the more isolated he becomes. By Infinity War, he's the only Avenger who truly understands Thanos' scale. Remember that scene where he warns the team in New York, explaining that this isn't just another invasion, but something bigger, something beyond anything they've faced? That is Doom's curse speaking through Tony. He sees farther. He knows more. And it isolates him. Now, if we connect this back to Thanos, the picture sharpens. Thanos, too, is cursed by what he knows. He looks out into the cosmos and sees only one solution to balance: destruction on a universal scale. He knows the price will be hated, reviled, but he believes no one else is strong enough to bear it. Sound familiar? It should, because it's the same justification Doom uses for ruling Latveria, and it's the same justification Tony uses when building Ultron or enforcing the Sokovia Accords. Thanos and Tony mirror each other precisely because of this curse. That's why Thanos singles him out on Titan. That's why the recognition feels so heavy. It's not two strangers meeting, it's two cursed men acknowledging one another. And if this is true, then we need to look at what Thanos really saw in Tony. Because it goes beyond intelligence. It goes into destiny. Thanos has the Mind Stone at his disposal during Infinity War. The Mind Stone amplifies perception, reveals patterns, exposes truths. When he studies Tony, when he fights him, it's possible Thanos sees not just Tony's mind, but his possible futures. Futures where Tony's brilliance twists into doom. Futures where Stark survives his friends, survives his enemies, and builds a kingdom of iron around the ruins. Futures where Tony's curse doesn't end with sacrifice. It evolves into tyranny. Thanos, cursed himself, recognizes the trajectory instantly. That's why the line carries prophetic weight. This idea gains even more traction when we consider the multiverse. After Loki, Spider-Man. No Way Home, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and now the Kang saga, the multiverse isn't just a side plot, it's the backbone of the MCU's next phase. Variants exist. Infinite versions of characters exist. If one Tony Stark sacrificed himself on Earth 6116, another might have survived. Another might have lost differently. Another might have carried his curse further down the path. And who does that other Tony become? Doom. It's almost too perfect. The MCU has opened the door for Tony's essence to return. Not as the Iron Man we knew, but as a darker variant, one who embodies all of Doom's traits. Think of the symbolism if the MCU revealed Doom as a variant of Tony Stark. It would immediately explain why Thanos recognized him. It would tie together Tony's legacy with the future of the MCU's villains. It would elevate Doom from just another adversary to the culmination of Tony's curse. And from a storytelling standpoint, it would be breathtaking. The man who gave his life to save the universe in one reality becomes the man who tries to rule it in another. A perfect duality. But here's the deeper layer. Even in comics, Tony and Doom are constantly intertwined. In infamous Iron Man, Doom literally becomes Iron Man. donning the armor after Tony falls. In Secret Wars, Doom wields godlike power, reshaping reality itself. And in alternate universes, Tony himself has flirted with villainy, becoming tyrants, futurists, even corrupted AI. The boundary between Tony Stark and Dr. Doom is thinner than it first appears. Marvel loves these juxtapositions, and the MCU thrives on them too. Look at how they blurred the line between Loki the villain and Loki the reluctant hero, or how they reframed Wanda from Avenger to Scarlet Witch antagonist. Why not play the same game with Tony and Doom? Now, let's examine the curse with knowledge through another lens, the human one. Because knowledge doesn't just curse the genius with responsibility, it isolates them emotionally. Tony loses people again and again. His father was distant, his mother was lost in tragedy, his mentor Yinsen dies in his arms, his partnership with Pepper is always under strain, his bond with Steve collapses, and eventually, Peter Parker, his surrogate son, experiences his death firsthand. Tony's knowledge never allows him peace. Doom, too, is defined by this loneliness. He is feared by his people, alienated by his peers, and haunted by the death of his mother. Both men are geniuses standing in empty rooms, gods trapped in human cages. The curse of knowledge is not just intellectual, it's emotional. And Thanos, who sacrificed Gamora for his vision, knows that loneliness all too well. That is why the line hits so hard. Thanos is not just saying, "You're smart like me." He's saying, "You've lost like me. You've carried like me. You are cursed like me." Now, if we embrace this theory fully, then Tony's story takes on a mythic quality. His death in Endgame is no longer just a noble sacrifice. It's the first act of transformation. He dies cursed with knowledge, and in another timeline, he survives cursed with knowledge. One road leads to martyrdom, and the other to doom. And that duality is exactly what makes this theory so rich. Because in the Marvel Multiverse, both can be true. One Tony is Iron Man the Savior. Another Tony is Doom the Tyrant. And Thanos saw both at once. Let's push this further by considering the thematic weight of masks and armor. In myth and literature, a mask is never just a tool. It is an identity. It is the externalization of an inner truth. Tony's Iron Man mask is the expression of his curse, the genius trapped behind iron. Doom's mask is the same. Both men hide scars, both physical and emotional, behind an iron face. Both claim control through armor. The MCU has already equated Tony's mask with his curse. Remember how many times he is shown alone, staring at his suits, questioning if he is more man or machine? That is Doom's psychology exactly. If Tony were to take one step further down that path, he wouldn't just wear the armor, he would become it. He would live as Doom. Now, think about why Marvel might choose to build Doom from Tony rather than introduce Doom as a stranger. It's because Doom needs to matter. He cannot just be a new villain showing up with Latveria out of nowhere. He needs to carry the weight of history. What better way to make him matter than to tie him directly to the face of the MCU's past? Tony Stark was the beginning. If Doom is his shadow, then Tony Stark also becomes the future. It creates a narrative symmetry that is undeniable. And this explains why Thanos' words still echo even years after Endgame. The MCU doesn't waste dialogue. If a line is delivered with gravitas, it has meaning beyond the moment. "You're not the only one cursed with knowledge" was not just Thanos being poetic. It was foreshadowing. It was the MCU planting a seed that could grow into the revelation of Doom. And audiences will look back and realize Thanos wasn't just speaking to Iron Man, he was unmasking him. He was saying, "I know you. I know your curse. I know your destiny." This brings us to an even more tantalizing possibility. What if the MCU's Doctor Doom isn't simply a Tony variant, but the logical endpoint of Tony's curse, resurrected or reimagined by forces greater than himself? Think about Kang, the multiversal manipulator. Think about the incursions. Think about universes colliding and identities splintering. It would not take much for Kang, or even the chaos of Secret Wars, to pull a Tony Stark from another timeline and twist his curse into doomhood. Thanos' line would then become the breadcrumb that proves this was always the plan. The curse of knowledge would bridge Iron Man to Doom across universes, across destinies, and if you stop and think about it, this would explain why no other Avenger gets that recognition. Steve Rogers is pure-hearted, but not cursed. Thor is powerful, but not cursed. Strange is wise, but his knowledge is chosen. Only Tony bears that restless, unwilling burden of seeing too much, too far, too often. He is cursed in a way only Thanos understands. That bond is what ties Tony to Doom, and Doom to Tony. And here's the chilling part. If Doom is Stark's shadow, then Tony's greatest fear comes true. Throughout his arc, Tony fears losing control. He fears becoming the very thing he fights against. That's why Ultron haunted him. That's why he argued with Cap about freedom versus security. That's why he pushed so hard to keep Spider-Man from repeating his mistakes. His fear was always, what if my knowledge, my genius, becomes the thing that dooms us? And if this theory is true, then yes, his fear comes true in another reality. His genius does doom the world. His curse does not end. It evolves. And this brings us right back to Thanos. Because Thanos is not just the villain of Infinity War. He's the mirror of Tony Stark. He is the warning. He is the embodiment of what happens when knowledge hardens into inevitability. Thanos' recognition of Tony is the recognition of a fellow traveler, someone who understands that curse, someone who might, in another life, make the same choices. So when Thanos says, "You're not the only one cursed with knowledge," what he's really saying is, I see you, Stark. I see the doom inside you. I see the destiny you cannot escape. And when your time comes, when your mask changes, you will understand me. That's why the line lingers. That's why the theory fits so tightly. Because it's not just a throwaway. It's prophecy. So now we stand at the edge of the theory, where all the threads begin to weave into something bigger. If the first arc showed us the mirror between Tony and Doom, and the second expanded it into the multiverse and Thanos' prophetic recognition, then this final arc asks the hardest question. What does it mean if Tony Stark was always Doctor Doom? What does it mean for the MCU, for his legacy, and for the story Marvel is telling us about knowledge, destiny, and the curse that binds them? To answer that, let's go back to the one thing Tony Stark never had: peace. Think about it. Every single time he gets close to peace, it's ripped away. After the Battle of New York, he's haunted by visions. After Ultron, he's haunted by guilt. After Civil War, he's haunted by division. Even when he retires at the start of Endgame, living a quiet life with Pepper and Morgan, he cannot rest once the possibility of undoing the snap presents itself. Peace eludes him, because knowledge is louder than rest. Doom lives in that same space. Doom cannot rest. Doom cannot step away. His mind burns too brightly to stop. He always sees what others miss. And so, like Tony, Doom is cursed not to live in peace, but to live in pursuit of solutions, of control, of inevitability. Now, here's where the story tightens its grip. What if Tony's sacrifice in Endgame was not closure, but ignition? Because think about the mechanics of what Tony did when he snapped. He didn't just wield power, he wielded the Infinity Stones. These are artifacts of cosmic knowledge, cosmic burden. They don't just destroy, they reshape. They don't just kill, they reveal. And for a brief moment, Tony Stark had the curse of all curses, the totality of universal knowledge in the palm of his hand. Imagine what that would do to a mind already cursed with knowledge. Imagine if that spark imprinted itself across realities, scattering echoes of Tony into variants that embody not just Iron Man's sacrifice, but Doom's inevitability. The snap wasn't just an ending, it was a split, a fork in destiny, where one Stark died a savior and another Stark lived on as Doom. This is the multiverse's cruelest poetry, that the same action can birth opposite outcomes. To one universe, Tony is the martyr who saved them. To another, Tony is the tyrant who survived, reshaped by the curse he absorbed in the instant of the snap. And in that tyrant's mask, in that ruler's armor, in that genius turned cold, there lies Doom. Thanos, who understood the stones, would know this. He would know what it means to wield such knowledge. That is why he recognizes Tony, not just in the present, but across all potential futures. The line, "You're not the only one cursed with knowledge," doesn't stop on Titan. It echoes into every corner of the multiverse. Let's also remember how Marvel loves to plant seeds that flower years later. The mention of Wakanda in Iron Man 2, the Tesseract being teased in Thor, the whispers of Infinity Stones long before the Gauntlet. Marvel plays the long game. So, what if Doom has been in play all along, hidden in Tony's shadow? What if Tony's arc was always designed to split, to end in duality? One path of sacrifice, one path of domination. That's the kind of storytelling symmetry that Marvel thrives on. It makes rewatching the entire saga feel like peeling back layers of prophecy. And think about how audiences would react. Dr. Doom is one of the greatest villains in comic book history, but he cannot simply walk into the MCU. He needs weight. He needs presence. He needs history. If Marvel makes Doom a variant of Tony Stark, suddenly he has all of that. He carries the emotional power of Iron Man's journey, twisted into something terrifying. He carries the recognition of Thanos' prophecy. He carries the thematic burden of knowledge, isolation, and control. He becomes not just a villain, but the shadow of the MCU's founding father. And from a storytelling standpoint, that makes him unforgettable. This also changes how we view Thanos, because if Thanos foresaw Tony's path to doom, then his war on the Avengers wasn't just about balance, it was about inevitability. He wasn't just fighting them, he was preparing them for the truth, that even their greatest hero, their first Avenger, their brightest mind, carries the seeds of their darkest enemy. And in a twisted way, Thanos almost becomes the messenger, the prophet who says, "You think I'm your greatest threat, but wait until you meet the shadow of your own making." That's chilling, and it makes Thanos' line one of the most prophetic in the entire Infinity Saga. Now, let's turn to the mythology of masks again, because this is where the storytelling gets rich. In myth, a mask isn't just something you wear, it's something you become. When Victor Von Doom put on his mask, he didn't just hide his scars, he became Doom. When Tony puts on his mask, he doesn't just fight crime, he becomes Iron Man. But the curse of knowledge ensures that the mask is never just protection, it is destiny. The longer Tony wears his armor, the more inseparable he becomes from it. And in a different reality, where his curse twists instead of redeems, the mask doesn't become Iron Man. It becomes Doom. That's why Thanos' recognition is so haunting. He sees the mask before Tony even knows it exists. And here's the final devastating symmetry. In the comics, Doom often believes himself to be the hero. He doesn't see himself as evil. He sees himself as the only one strong enough to bear the curse of knowledge, the only one willing to do what others cannot. Tony lives in that same space. That's why he built Ultron. That's why he pushed the Accords. That's why he fought his own friends in Civil War. He believed he was the only one who could see the path. He believed he was cursed to know what others would not. And in another life, another reality, that belief calcifies into tyranny. That belief writes Dr. Doom across Tony Stark's legacy. Not because he wanted it, but because the curse never let him rest. So when we go back to that line, to that battlefield on Titan, to that chilling moment between Thanos and Tony, we need to see it not just as dialogue, but as revelation. Thanos wasn't just respecting Tony. He wasn't just comparing himself. He was naming him. He was saying, I see the doom in you. I see the mask you will wear. You and I are bound by the same curse, the same knowledge, the same inevitability. And one day, in some reality, you will understand me. That's the true weight of the line. That's the secret Marvel may be planting. That's the theory that reframes everything. And maybe that's the truest curse of all, that Tony Stark's story never really ends. In one universe, he's the savior who sacrificed everything. In another, he's the tyrant who wears the mask of doom. And in both, he is cursed with knowledge. Knowledge that never rests, never forgives, never lets go. So if Marvel reveals Dr. Doom as a Tony Stark variant, it won't just shock us. It will make us look back at every moment of Tony's journey, every line of dialogue, every scar, and realize it was always there. The curse was always leading him here. And Thanos was the only one who saw it. And that, my friends, is why the line, "You're not the only one cursed with knowledge," is not just powerful, it's prophetic. It's the moment Thanos unmasked Tony Stark, not as Iron Man, but as Dr. Doom. Now, if you've stayed with me through this entire deep dive, through this whole storytelling journey, I have to ask you something. If you believe in this theory, if you can see how tightly the threads connect, if you can feel the weight of what Thanos really meant, then this is where I need your help. Because creating these theories, digging into these stories, weaving them into something new, it takes time, energy, and a lot of passion. So if you want to see more theories like this, if you want to support this channel directly, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you really want to help us keep doing this work, consider dropping a $25 super chat to support us directly. It goes a long way in keeping these theories alive, keeping this conversation alive, and keeping this community alive. Because in the end, we are all cursed with knowledge. Knowledge that these stories matter. Knowledge that Marvel hides secrets in plain sight. Knowledge that sometimes the greatest heroes carry the seeds of the greatest villains. Tony Stark was Iron Man. Tony Stark was a savior. But in another mask, in another life, Tony Stark is Doom. And Thanos knew it all along.